Okay, so in this video, I'm going to demo the progress that we have made so far on our project. So firstly, we got a server on DigitalOcean. We called the server Saute, which is pretty much just our team name. It's a 1 gig memory server with 25 gig space, just one CPU. It's a pretty small server, but for our intended purposes, it's good enough. So I'm going to shell into our server right now. So for our project, it's a food app, a food website. We got our data for our food online from a nice online data set that we found online. It was in CSV format. So we had to create a script to process the CSV file and convert it to JSON because we're working with MongoDB, which accepts data in a JavaScript object notation. So this is the file. This is the file right here. It's file processor.py. So it takes in the CSV file, it reads it, it scrapes it and put it into the intended look that we want it to be. And then it converts it to JSON. It spits out a nice JSON file. So this is the CSV file that we feed it. Just a bunch of data here about, I want to say 800 to 1,000 different rows. So now we're in our server. Let's check if Mongo's on. Sudo system control. This is just an Ubuntu server, by the way. System control status. On good. Server is active, so we can just shell into Mongo right here by typing Mongo. We're in our Mongo shell. On our server, by the way, we downloaded all the dependencies, Python and Mongo needed for our project. So I'm just going to clear some of the space right here. Show DBs. Mongo imported our data into this database, recipes. And we also created a collection with the same name, because when working with Mongo, I just feels like it's more better just keep the same naming convention so it's easy to remember the collections. So if I show collections here, you'll see that the collection name, collections, it's the same name. So I could just perform a query right here. So db.collection name .find .pretty, so give you a pretty format. So this is all the data that we have in our database. It's about, again, about 800 to 1,000, something around that. So we look at one document in Mongo, because Mongo it's pretty much a document, is what they call it. So it gives you this object ID, and then we just put an ID for ourselves. The data set has the title, the ingredients as needed, the instructions needed to cook it, the image name, the cleaned ingredients, so the ingredients that was cleaned in the process. Yeah, that's how our data is. So I'm going to launch up our API. We also created an API for this, so I'm going to launch up our API. We're currently shelled into our server. We imported Fast API to allow us to do, it's an easy way to make APIs, I'd say. Then we imported PyMongo, which allows us to connect to the Mongo client, which is the same shell right here. We create this variable, point to our database, recipe, point to our collection, instance of Fast API, and then we created these routes. This is just a default route. And this is the query that queries all. We don't have many queries now, but these are the few queries that we felt like were kind of necessary moving forward. Something that shows all food and search by ingredients. So I'm going to launch up my API. UVcorn app -- reload. Open it in browser. It's running on port 8000. It's going to display just the default path. and I have another path called all, which just shows all of the data. I skip to the 100th element, and I have it paginated. I have it just only limiting the amount of data that feeds back to about 100 or 1,000, I think, is how I have it. Okay, I limit it to 100, so it only displays 100 different documents per se. From there, so the way our project is right now, things are kind of separate. So we have the back end and we have the front end, but they're pretty much separate because I felt like it was going to be such a strain to develop the entire design on the Seam server. So I worked on the front end on localhost using React. So I downloaded the dependencies. I have this components, which will display a nav bar. This is all the components for nav bar. I split things up in terms of different facets. So this is the nav bar, creating the nav bar. This is style components. I think it's a way easier way than using plain CSS, if you ask me. This is for the nav bar. Then I have one for sidebar, which I will show you how it looks when I launch up this server. Sidebar elements, the style components. There's pages, so just hold the pages, you know. See the sidebar, nav bar, and then the first div and the different states, passing them in to toggle things on and off. Then I also have a video that I'll show you on the website. So let me launch this up. So the command for React is npm start, or if you have Yarn, you could use Yarn. It's pretty much the same thing. I've worked with a little bit React before. I'm no expert, but this is, I'd say is relatively easier. I feel like it's easier than using, you know, other resources out there, like, you know. So this is how, this is pretty much how the front end is that we developed. You know, it doesn't have any actions to it, but this is the nav bar that I was talking about with all of the nav elements, you know, about us, cuisine, and these things do hover, you know, some type of effects toggle. There's toggles when you highlight over it. This is the video that I was talking about behind there. And let me show you the sidebar. So when it reaches a certain length or a width, like you have for mobile users, this is pretty much the width that they'd be always accustomed to. It has the sidebar. So, you know, I have a toggle over, and then I have a button right here. And if you click anywhere, it exits out. It's supposed to, eventually it's supposed to, when you click about us, go to the above us page, or if you click sign in, goes to the sign in page. It's a work in progress, but this is all that we have so far for our project.